Hey, really? Okay, so if you can see my screen, give me a thumbs up. So I said, if you guys can see my screen, awesome. Okay, so as always, I am recording our sessions. For anyone that's, you know, people that are obviously we have only 5 of you here today. So if any of you guys missed any of the sessions from before, actually I have recorded most of the sessions. If you go to Mr. Tall English for YouTube, you'll see that all our Zoom sessions are here. And even though there are some deadlines for assignments, you still go back and do them just because I know that everyone has the same access. So if you miss any of it, you just see Zoom English, and actually you can see I re-recorded most of the sessions that we had. So if you're behind on anything, you can always go back to any of the sessions. That's important because last week, where is it? The most recent one, Zoom English 11, which was on Friday. We went over Act 1 of our play. So if you had no idea what our play is about, I went over the first act and kind of explained to all the people. The session before that, on session 4 and 5, I kind of explained the characters and who they are. So if you're completely lost, I go back there. Okay, so what you needed to do. So some people might be like very behind. If you go to the witch hunt, there were different assignments. Last week I needed you guys to do the first act, and you might see that in discussions. This book right here. If you don't have the book, I uploaded a PDF onto Unit 4, and you see a unit text. But regardless of that, we had a quiz, and the quiz are here, and it's still available. I made it, past the time, you can still take it. So it's right here. Quiz number 3, Act 1, Sinners in Heaven, Thank God. If you got a bad score on it, actually, so you could take it up to 3 times. So if you see this, there's 3 times, and it only saves the high score. So let's say the first time you took it, it's like, oh man, I didn't do this so well. You could go and take it again. And the only thing is, though, I don't show you the answers, so you might have to kind of figure out, okay, I got that wrong. I need to figure out how to improve your score. So I'll go back, either reread Act 1 or go watch the video that we did on Act 1, which was on Friday, and you have opportunity to take any of the quizzes for the play again. So it's not just one time. Okay, so one of the assignments we had from last week is, actually 2 assignments we had from last week. We did Act 1 questions and actually kind of gave it to everyone. So as you see on Schoology, there's a section called Act 1, and people turned it in. So everyone, if you didn't do that, I'll do it. So basically you just take a picture of the questions, and the questions I uploaded here, which is it's called Act 1 guiding questions. You take a picture of it, and hopefully Raymond doesn't mind, and you get credits for so she typed it up, which is awesome. I know Jocelyn, she wrote it down on a piece of paper, which is cool too. It doesn't matter. So as long as you kind of showed me that you started doing the work. All right, so that's Act 1 question. So if you haven't done that yet, still you have the opportunity to do that. Today, we're gonna take notes on Arthur Miller. So I'm gonna show you a PowerPoint, and afterwards you can go back here and answer these questions. What are 5 to 6 things you learned about the playwright, and what are 5 to 6 things you learned about the Puritans? So we're gonna go over a PowerPoint today. So before we get started, I'll give you about a minute to kind of get some paper and get ready, and I'll show you our PowerPoint. So Give you like a second if you want to grab some paper, and you're needed for our future quiz, which is going to be on Act 2 and the author. And give you about a minute to get some paper right now while I grab some things. So we're going to start on this in a second. Afterwards, the assignment we need to do for today is there's a discussion post called groupthink. I'll explain afterwards. And there is a discussion post called in-class discussion number 3. You're going to basically answer some questions about this PowerPoint. If you want to go ahead and be like ahead of the class, on Thursday, I'm going to, actually no, we're going to start talking about Act 2. I upload Act 2 questions, and that's going to be due next Tuesday. But if you do that ahead of time, you can take the Act 2 quiz. I think I'll open it up either on Thursday. So if you want to do those questions ahead of time, you can. That'd be awesome. So those are on Schoology already. Okay, so I uploaded this this PowerPoint onto Schoology. So let's say you missed something, you can see it on Unit 4. And if you go through interactive notebook materials, you'll see that there's a lot of like different PDFs. The one we're gonna look at today is called Intro Historical Background Crucible. So we'll learn about the author, and we'll learn about the Puritans. So if you want to see that later on. Okay, let's go over this. The Crucible. What you need to know about the context of this famous play, and it's one of the more famous plays in American literature and the U.S. history. All right, so first off, like a crucible, what it stands for is a vessel or melting pot. They used to have, it's just like this clay device where they use to melt things, right? Also, it's they use it for like science, to it heats up to melt something. Use it to test something. So actual crucible is used to heat or melt something, and the point of it is to test something to see if it works as a trial. The metaphor for that is the term crucible can also be used as a metaphor, which brings us to our next definition: a test or a trial. Folks use the term crucible to refer to a difficult test. So the Salem witch trials is a test of if you are a peer, if you are a sinner, if you're related to the devil stuff, or in a sense, it's a test to see who is willing to avoid hysteria. So crucible, it means a vessel or melting pot. It's a metaphor for a difficult test. So that's like one thing about it. Our author is Arthur Miller. He is the writer of our play. If you guys go to Miss Parker next year, she reads another play. Very, very well-established author. So remember, at the end of this, you're gonna need to know about 5 to 6 things about the play. About the playwright. Playwright is a term we use to call people who write plays. You see the spelling of it in the first bullet point. one of America's most renowned playwrights. He was born in New York and grew up in Brooklyn. As a child, he played football and baseball and read adventure stories and wasn't particularly literary. So he wasn't known as like a brainy kid in literature. Playwrights, this is a term we use to copyright plays. And if you miss anything, we are recording it, and as well, you can always go back and look at the slides. So he worked in an auto parts factory so he could afford to go to college, where he decided to become a journalist. So he has a degree in journalism. Graduated from the University of Michigan in 1938 and went back to New York and started writing for radio. He married his first wife, and he over time had divorced, and he got more famous. He married different people. So he actually married his first wife in 1940, and this is important because actually he marries a famous woman later on, and you'll all recognize her name later. So key thing from here, he worked in a factory, but then he decided to go to college and he studied journalism. He graduated from University of Michigan, and he started to study writing for radio. So he hasn't written a play yet, hasn't started writing yet. So he married his first wife, Mary, in the 1940s. All right, so after that, after the 1940s, that's when he started to get into his work, his actual writing. His first play on Broadway was The Man Who Had All the Luck. It was his first play. Then he published his first book in 1945, Focus. In 1947, he had the next play called All My Sons, which was one of his first successful adventures. In 1949, he had a very successful play called Deathless Salesman, which brought him worldwide fame. This is actually one of my favorite plays, especially by him. I read it when I was a senior in high school. Loved it. So we have, by 1949, 9 years into his career, he becomes successful. Okay, so we have different events where he makes success. So he writes play, he publishes a novel, he has another play, but his first real success is Death of the Salesman. Okay. In the 1950s, and we'll go over this more probably on Thursday after we get a little more into the play. The 1950s are a crazy time period. So the people who are in charge of the country, most Americans were scared, like now, where they're scared of certain things. They were scared of communists in the 1950s. So communists were, communists are known as the rivals, the enemies, which was the Soviet Union, which is Russia. So the United States and Russia was in the midst of the Cold War. America gets in a bunch of wars throughout, and we'll go over it in the future, like the Korean War and the Vietnam War, because they're trying to fight communism, right? In America, the government was trying to find communists And if you were a communist, you would put in jail. You were blacklisted, meaning that you weren't allowed to work. So a lot of times, communists were inside of Hollywood, or was believed. A lot of people that Arthur Miller's friends with was accused of being communist by the government, and they were allowed to work, or they'll put in jail. He was even accused. He related a lot of his experiences to the Salem witch trials because he saw that people were being accused of something that they had no control over. We read an article in discussion number 2 called McCarthyism, and that's just something we'll go back to on Thursday. But his experiences during this time period led to write The Crucible, of the being accused of communism and the country. So The Crucible, it wasn't initially successful on Broadway, but has since become the most produced play. So, meaning it's the most widely produced play in the United States right now. So, by 1956, he leaves his first wife and he gets married to Marilyn Monroe. He marries her, which is kind of crazy. So Marilyn Monroe at the time was one of the most famous actresses. She's like the Kim Kardashian of 1960s and 1950s. Like you guys all know who Marilyn Monroe is. I assume so. So he marries her. They're married for about 5 years, but then after that they split up. Towards his career in 1960s, he starts writing screenplays. Screenplays are scripts used for movies or plays, movies or television shows. So he gets into television and movies. Later on, he goes back to writing for theater. He marries again in 1962, so he's married 3 times. He was still writing it in the 1990s, including the screenplay for the film adaptation of The Crucible. So even in the 1990s, he is writing for the movie. And if you get a chance, I'd watch the movie. It's on YouTube. Yeah. And then in 2005, he passes away. That was like a very short bio, but on Thursday when we learn about McCarthyism a little more, you see he is more interesting because he's an activist for the people in Hollywood. So he dies in 2005. So half of Notes You May Take is based on Arthur Miller. The other half is based on Puritans. So at the end of the day, in class discussion, assignment is to write a short paragraph on Arthur Miller and then a short paragraph on The Crucible. Not Crucible, the Puritans. All right. So now that we know a little bit about Arthur, let's learn about the Puritans. So who were these Puritans? You might have learned this in American history in the very, very, very beginning. First off, let's learn about the time period. Middle Ages, so I'm talking about like the 14 and 1500s. A great time of change. The plague, very similar to actually what's happening now. There was a disease that went across the countries in Europe, and it killed a lot of people, up to 40% of the population. But back then, they didn't have any type of remedy or disease, actual adequate health care. So 40% of the population in Europe died because of the plague, the Black Plague. It was a disease that was spread through rats. Didn't have a good sewer system. So back then, before there were actually pipes where you could like flush away your stuff, you kind of used to run the streets. So that actually caused more diseases, and there's lots of war. were fighting all the time. French and English, they fought like a 100-year war. This is all in the 1500s and 1600s. So lots of war, lots of death. The authority of kings and church was being questioned. New ideas were being brought to earth. So stuff in science, like we're finding out that the earth is flat, the earth is round, which is kind of funny because even though in 1600s people found out the earth wasn't flat, people nowadays still believe it's flat, which is crazy. Makes no sense, right? That just makes no sense to me. There's new inventions like the printing press. So it's named, I forgot. So he makes the printing press. So what that is ability for people to mass produce books. Essentially, they have this giant machine where they lay out letters, little letters, like metal letters, and they press books, pages of books, and they can make mass-produced books. Back then, before that machine was made, you would have to handwrite all your books. But what do you guys think is the most sold books in the world? Probably. So the most sold book, most distributed book in the world, obviously, is the Bible. So that was presented. So all of this leads to instability in society. There's a growing change. There's a lot of things are fighting again. People are still religious. There is a belief that there is evil in the world, that there's witches, right? In Italy, Switzerland, Germany, France, and other parts of Europe, hundreds of witches were killed. Witches, right? In some instances, people were actually tied up and thrown into water. If you floated, you were guilty because Satan was helping you. And if you would be killed, and you would be killed. If you drowned, you were innocent. Think how silly that is. In some places, they'll throw into the water. If you float, which is a natural thing that people do. Like if you ever went to the pool and just laid there, and I hope you guys learn how to swim, you will naturally float. So if you floated, you were killed because Satan was helping you. If you were innocent, you drowned, which is not a great way of finding out you're innocent because you're dead. You see that in the Salem witch trials. So like they put people on fire. If you survived, you're part of Satan. If you didn't, you were innocent, or to hang you. So it's a very silly logic. So in the 1600s, we have the Puritans. They were a religious group in England who had very strict rules about how people should behave. Eventually, the English people got sick of them, and so many Puritans fled to the U.S. to escape religious persecution. So they settled in North America in the 1620s. So, like, the English government was doing things that the Puritans didn't think was pure enough, obviously. They allowed divorce. King Henry, he divorced his wife many times and he actually started a new church because of that. But the Puritans, the key thing is that they were very strict in their religious things, and they wanted to move to the United States to escape being persecuted because the English didn't like how strict they were. So they started landing in the United States, North America. There was no U.S. until 1776, in 1620. The things that they believed in, they believed in the Bible. They felt that it revealed the Lord's words, and only through it does He directly communicate to people. So they believed that the Bible was strictly from the mouth of God. So they also believed, and if you remember Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, that was an example of a sermon from the Puritan time. They believed man could do nothing to be saved. Salvation was a gift that could only come from God. So they had to spend their lives going to church. They had to spend their lives staying away from sin because they felt like every second of their day was being judged. However, which is a crazy thing, in bullet point 3, they believe something called predestination, right? So they think that from the time you are born, predestination, this is predestined. That's actually a phrase I want you to know. Predestination. They believe that from the time someone is born, it is decided if you're going to heaven or hell, and you don't know until you die. You feed that path. So they're constantly on search to know if they're on the right path. But predestination says, as the name is, is already determined if you're going to heaven or hell by the time you were born. So, key things from there, they believe the Bible was the workings of the Lord. They believe man can do nothing to be saved, and salvation was a gift from only God. And your soul was predestined. So, it's something called predestination. They believe that it was already decided by the time you were born if you're going to heaven or not. The key thing that to understand about even the play in this society, and I guess this idea of sexism kind of goes throughout U.S. history. So women were considered subservient to men, so meaning their role in the house was to obey and abide by the men. If you know, in the play, the women don't get power until they are allowed to be the trial stuff. If you notice that no man is accused of being a witch in the settlement times, because I believe that women were more likely to consort with the devil. Which sucks. They believe that girls and women were more likely to be involved with the devil. In this time, you'll see that the church was a center of society. A lot of their laws are closely related to the laws of the church. That was the center of society. You had to go to church. Their goal in life was to purge evil from the world. One way to do this was to confront and eradicate. To eradicate is a fancy word to mean kill, to eliminate witchcraft. Okay, so all right, so that's all we need to know about the. Actually, two last things. Where our story takes place. So, in the 1600s, around the 60s and 1690s, none of these states exist. But we have like the colonies. This is before the United States was formed. We are in Massachusetts. That's the state we're in. We're a colony, Massachusetts colony. And Salem is at the very edge of the Massachusetts colony. All right, if you missed anything, you can definitely go back to it. So what you need to be able to do, there's more to the slide, but that's pretty. It's like so much trial stuff that we're kind of get over. All right. So what you need to do today? We have 2 assignments. The first one is related to our notes, or the PowerPoint we did today. So you click on in-class discussion number 3, Arthur Miller, and all you need to do is there's 2 short paragraphs. 5 to 6 things you learned about the playwright. So what you learn about the person. You can definitely look for more information if you want to. But use complete sentences. You're not using bullet points. And paragraph 2, what are things you learned about the Puritans? What do you learn about who they are and what they do? And then the second thing you need to do. Discussion number 4. It's called groupthink. As you click on it, there is a quick answer in one paragraph. So, Irvin Janis is a research psychologist at Yale University and a risk management organizer. Defines groupthink as faulty decisions as a specific group that makes due to pressures that lead to deterioration of mental efficiency, reality, and moral judgment. Further, groups affected by groupthink ignore alternatives and tend to take irrational actions that dehumanize other groups. A group is especially vulnerable to groupthink when its members are similar in background, when the group is insulated from outside opinions, and when there are no clear rules for decision making. How does this definition and explanation factor into Miller's play and in society? So this is very confusing. What it means is groupthink is sometimes when you're by yourself, you have your own opinions, you have your own thoughts. But sometimes when people are put into groups, especially groups of the same age group, of the same background, they tend to just follow what the group says. They allow peer pressure to take them. I always say that by themselves, like boys are smart, but you put a group of teenage boys together, they always do dumb things. And I do, me too, I admit that. Me and my friends are silly when we get in the group. But what it means is when people are put into groups together, they tend to just follow the same opinion, right? There's not a lot of individuality in it, personality. So how does this relate to Miller and what happens with the girls? Like, how does it relate? And explain like this idea of peer pressure, of how people fall into the idea of just going along with what the group thinks rather than having their own personal opinions. Okay, so those are 2 assignments due by Thursday. But if you want to go ahead, and you definitely can, you can read Act 2, and you look at the very bottom right here. Act 2 questions are available. But besides that, we're going to meet again on Thursday. Our normal time. So yesterday I had a meeting during our normal time period, so I had to reschedule for today. All right. Do we have any questions about anything?
What PDF is the slide on?
It's called. I'll go back to it. If you go to interactive notebook materials, and you go all the way to the bottom, it's called Intro to Historical Background Crucible.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. How do I stop the screen here? All right, I think that's good. Thank you for everyone who showed up. And if you missed anything, there'll be a video online. And if you have friends that missed anything, just tell them about our YouTube channel. All right, I'll see you guys on Thursday.
Okay.
See you guys.
Bye.